Could the Mets pursue Kyle Tucker in free agency? We look into Kyle Tucker as a free agent here on the latest edition of the Bleav in Mets pod. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie back with you to talk all things New York Mets. Jack, this is episode number 95, getting close to 100 episodes of this new era of Bleav in Mets. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Chris. I didn't realize how far we were into this thing. Almost 100 episodes is pretty impressive, and I'm excited to talk about one of the hottest, maybe the hottest name on the free agent market right now, and how he might fit on the New York Metropolitans.
Yeah, it's certainly a name that if you look at, ESPN, Fangraphs, The Athletic, the top of the list, the number one free agent available is Kyle Tucker, the 28-year-old who spent last season with the Chicago Cubs after spending the first 7 years of his career in Houston, got the qualifying offer from Chicago in the offseason, so there is some draft pick compensation to worry about with a potential pursuit. Tucker, four-time All-Star, Gold Glove winner in 2022 out in right field, two-time Silver Slugger, and maybe most importantly for what the Mets are trying to do culture-wise, World Series champion in 2022. Last season with the Cubs, Kyle Tucker, 266, 377, 464 slash line with a 136 WRC plus. That was good enough to get him a 4.5 WAR season. Jack, that was last year for Kyle Tucker. Before we dive into what makes him the top free agent available and what might be the biggest contract given out this offseason, your top-line thoughts on the 28-year-old free agent.
I really like Kyle Tucker. I've liked Kyle Tucker as a player since maybe 2021. I don't want to say I was super early on him, but I felt like once we got to 22, 23, he was starting to become one of the more underrated outfielders. And then, obviously, over the last few years, given his consistent production, both with base running, with power, with contact, with fielding, like, he just is a very well-rounded player, and I think he's become a lot more properly rated. Obviously, you mentioned the 4 All-Stars all coming in the last 4 seasons, and the Silver Slugger this most recent year. So I like him. What the top-line thing that I'm anxious about, and we don't have to talk about it right now, is just the value that he's going to bring himself as a free agent. The amount of money that a contract is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. Fangraphs, their crowdsourced projections had him at an 8-year, $280 million deal. The Athletic projected a 12-year, $460 million deal. ESPN projected an 11-year, $418 million deal. So you're talking big, massive dollars for a second straight offseason on one free agent for the New York Mets. And, that may be a reason why this ultimately doesn't happen. But when we look at this from a strictly roster perspective, the Mets need a DH. They need somebody in the outfield. And while the majority of Kyle Tucker's playing time in the outfield has been in right field, his second most utilized position out there is left field, so there could be some consideration there. But this is a guy who has just posted, and he's posted numbers, each of the last couple of years. He's been at least a 4.2 WAR player for 5 straight seasons. He's had 5 straight seasons with at least 20 home runs. I think the question mark, if we were going to start with maybe one of the big negatives on Kyle Tucker, is the injury profile. Yeah. And just the amount of time he has missed within the last 2 years. Only played in 78 games in 2024, 136 games last year. And we'll get back to that because I think a lot of the underlying numbers for Kyle Tucker from last season are a direct reflection on the injury that he had that he tried to play through for a really, really long time. Yeah. But this is a player who has never finished a full season. 157 games is the most that he's played in a year. The last 2 years it has been a question mark. Now, these aren't soft tissue things. This isn't like hamstrings or quads or calves, right? Like, not to make this about the Yankees, but with Giancarlo Stanton, you just know you're going to have a soft tissue injury once a year with Giancarlo Stanton. This is broken bones. This is fractures. It's that type of stuff for Kyle Tucker that is part of the injury profile, but it is something to note that he's missed the last 2 years. But despite that, still a 4-win player each of the last 5 seasons, 5 straight years with 20 home runs, provides the power. And I think the Athletic write-up on Kyle Tucker is the perfect, I think, starting point for us in this conversation. I'm going to read, this is from, I believe it is from Tim Brinton over at The Athletic, who wrote this blurb up. Quote, Tucker doesn't wow with any one aspect of his game. He's never hit more than 30 home runs or batted 300, but he hits for a solid average and for extra base pop, walks as often as he strikes out, can steal 20 bases, and plays above average defense in right field. And I think that is a extremely fair way to view Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is not great at any one thing in particular. He's just really good at a lot of things. And I think when you think of that, and you see the contract projections, you're expecting Aaron Judge type production or Juan Soto type production. You're expecting production from, the best of the best. Whereas I think the value here for Kyle Tucker is he's 28, he'll be 29 on opening day, and he also just does a lot of things really well. Plays above average defense, can steal bases, doesn't strike out a ton, has great plate discipline, hits for enough power to justify, a $30-40 million AAV, and you add it all up and you very quickly get to a double-digit year, $300-400 million contract, and that's how Kyle Tucker finds himself atop of the free agent landscape.
Right, it's kind of what I was saying as far as he's just super well-rounded as a player. Like, everything is above average. His ability to hit for contact, his ability to walk, his ability to steal bases. He hasn't had a 30-30 season yet, Chris, but there is a projection there that it's within the realm of possibility. He has a few seasons with 25 steals. He's got 30 home runs twice. So, I mean, when I think about the impact that Juan Soto had when he started being able to steal bases for the Mets last season, I start to get excited about what that might look like with Kyle Tucker, a guy who walks a lot and can steal bases, a guy who hits for a decent amount of power, and the kind of upgrade that might be over, let's talk about Brandon Nimmo and the departure that he's left in the Mets lineup. I think that having a guy that gets on base and hits for power is kind of like the best of both worlds from what the Mets were getting in the two phases of Nimmo's Mets tenure. So I am very fascinated about the amount of money that Tucker's going to get because, like you said, all of these solid aspects of him as a player have added up to create this very valuable position player that a lot of teams will be in on the potential bidding war for.
Yeah, and I think the part of Kyle Tucker's game that really would excite me if I was a potential team trying to court him in free agency, it's the command of the strike zone.
Yeah.
He has elite K rates, elite walk rates over the last couple of years. He doesn't whiff a ton. And last year was his best year in terms of not chasing pitches outside of the zone. But in general, that's been an upward trajectory over the last couple of years of being really, really elite at and that's what allows him to draw so many walks. And so, you're not going to have somebody like Aaron Judge who's going to hit 40, 45 home runs, but he's going to have a decent on-base percentage because he just has great command of the strike zone and he's going to be able to draw those walks. And, that's one of the reasons why, for many reasons why the Mets went out and signed Juan Soto, just that, elite understanding of the strike zone and just knowing when to be aggressive, when to be patient. And, I know it probably frustrated some Mets fans throughout the year just how patient Juan Soto was, but you saw at the end of the year that it makes him the player that he is and then allows him to have that confidence. And Tucker is the same in that regard. Now, he did have a weird year last year. His exit velocity was down, his max exit velo was down, and his hard hit percentage was down. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to play one here on this podcast. That is directly, in my mind, a reflection of the fracture to his right hand, that he just, if he tried to swing harder and crush the ball, like his arm might have fallen off, his hand might have fallen off. Yeah. He was playing through a fracture and his numbers, really suffered during that stretch that he was dealing with that. But overall, throughout his career, he hits the ball relatively hard. He hits, his hard hit percentage is up there. His max EV is up there. He had a really down year. It's kind of an outlier in that regard. So that's why I'm willing to cast it aside as directly related to the right hand fracture. He's a career 865 OPS. Again, elite command of the strike zone. He's not going to hit 320. He's not going to hit 325. Right? He's not going to be Luis Ariz with the bat in terms of average. He's not going to be Juan Soto in terms of on base. He's not going to be Aaron Judge in terms of power. But he's going to be like 75th plus, maybe 80th percentile of all of those players in those attributes. And when you add all of that up, that makes one of the most well-rounded players in baseball. It's almost like, what's the jack of all trades, master of none phrase? Like, that's what Kyle Tucker is. He's just so well-rounded skills-wise that he's not elite at one thing, but like the best power hitter in the sport's Aaron Judge, right? Kyle Tucker, power-wise, hard hit-wise, is maybe the 65th percentile, 70th percentile of Aaron Judge, but he also is going to provide, 80th percentile of the on-base percentage of Juan Soto. And so you just add it all up, and it's the type of player that I understand why some team is going to throw $400 million in front of him.
Yeah, I think to that end, something that Kylie McDaniel of ESPN pointed out is when you look at Fangraphs and they have like the breakdowns of offensive and defensive value that a player adds, Kyle Tucker is 9th in the last 5 years in terms of offensive value. So above guys like Ronald Acuna, obviously has been dealing with injuries, Matt Olson, Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Tucker's in the Bryce Harper, Vlad Guerrero range in terms of the value that he's added with his bat over the last 5 years. And I think, again, that just really speaks to he's not a superhero power guy. He's not going to give you the 40, 50 home runs that, a Soto, an Aaron Judge might give you. But the way that he's able to produce as a guy that gets on base, a guy that knows the strike zone really well, and a guy that can hit for 20 to 30 home runs is a perfect kind of player to fit the hole that the Mets have in their lineup right now without Pete Alonso and without Brandon Nimmo on the roster as things currently stand.
Yeah, I will say this: it's not a one-to-one fit for the Mets, right? I mean, a majority of his time has been in right field, and I'll give you the numbers. He's played 5,447 innings in right field. Again, just to put that in context, 5,447 innings in right field. He's played 560 in left, 29 in center field, and 14 as a first baseman. So you would be putting him in the position that he's played the second most, but it is a very distant second. And the Mets right now, their one outfield spot that we think is relatively open is left field. And so maybe you're getting Tucker to be a DH. Maybe, as we know, Juan Soto's defense isn't that great. Maybe you're getting Tucker with the idea of moving Soto into a permanent DH role. It's not a one-to-one, we have a need at right field, we're going to go sign Kyle Tucker. There are some moving parts, but when it is a player of this caliber that has this type of resume with also the projections. I mean, the projections for next season, just for next season, have him hitting 268 with a 371 on base percentage, 29 home runs, 86 RBIs in 152 games. That's Fangraphs with their projections. Good enough for a 4.3 WAR and a 136 WRC plus. I mean, that's when I think of what the Mets are missing in their lineup. It's somebody who is going to hit for a decent average, hit for pop, extra bases, play great defense, can steal bases, can do all of those things. That was the thing that was missing from this lineup last year, and so the move of Nimmo kind of opened up the door. Now, Cody Bellinger, and I don't want to do the Cody Bellinger show before we do the Cody Bellinger show, but Cody Bellinger is the more natural fit because he's played left field, and you could just put him in there, and you also have the opening at first base. But from an overall player perspective, Kyle Tucker is just he's number one for me on my free agent list. No questions asked for the Mets.
I think when it comes to the corner outfield spots, I was honestly considering, do the Mets decide maybe move Juan Soto over to left field, let Kyle Tucker take right field? I don't know if it's a comfortability thing. Soto's played 4,000 innings in left field, and most of that was early in his career with the Nats. He was primarily left fielder. Davey switched him over, I think, in 2019 or 2020. 2021, it looks like, was when he became the full-time right fielder for the Nats. And so Soto has more innings in left field than Kyle Tucker does at this stage in both of their careers. So, again, Soto's the guy that you just brought in for this massive contract and is, for all intents and purposes, like the franchise player now because of that. And you don't want to disgruntle him with a move to a different position. But I think it goes back to the point you were making, Chris, which is Soto's not long for fielding at all anyway. And so if this is a move that the Mets think they can make to make the team better, and they move Soto over to left field for, 2 or 3 years before he goes to the DH full time, I think that's something that they just end up doing because Kyle Tucker, like you said, is the kind of guy that improves the team in a lot of ways offensively.
Yeah, I think to myself, back to the conversation we had after the Mets, traded for Cedric Mullins, and we were having the debate about who should play. If Taylor and Mullins are both playing, who should play center and who should play left. And I think it's, at a higher scale, a similar conversation here. If you sign Kyle Tucker and you want to put both Tucker and Soto in the outfield, what is a better configuration? Soto in right where he played last year and Tucker in an unfamiliar left, or Soto in a more familiar left and Tucker in his more natural position in right? To me, it would be if I need to play both of them in the outfield, I would flip Soto over to left, which is why, to your point about in year one making that change, it feels more like you sign Kyle Tucker to be your DH, and on days where you want to get Soto a day off, you can put Tucker out in the outfield. Because while his defense is a part of his game, I wouldn't say it's the skill that you're signing him for, right? You're not signing him because he's a super average, above average elite defender, and that's like one of the main three things you're looking to. The bat is the main thing that you're signing him for. That's
true. It's also important to point out though that he is not as detrimental fielding wise as Juan Soto is in the outfield. Kyle Tucker's a better defender than Soto, but it's not like he's a Gold Glove contender year after year.
Oh, you're talking Kyle Tucker, right? Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
he's won one Gold Glove. It was 22, I believe, so it was a long time ago. And I have his Statcast page up. I'll give
And
you
his sprint speed has declined year over year. Like, he's not a guy that's going to give you, a crazy range or anything, or like insane plays. Like, he's a good defender. Soto is not that, and we saw the Mets were willing to shell out for that bat over the defense with Soto last year.
Yeah, and we it depends on who you talk to. Some people like outs above average. Some people like fielding run value as the thing they look to. Here's Tucker throughout his career, and I'll start with 2020 because that's the year where he played 400 innings. He was a 3-run value in 2020. He was a 0-run value in 21. The year he wins the Gold Glove in 22, he's an 8-run value. In 23, it's a -4. In 24, it's a 2. In 25, it's a 0. So he peaks in 22, and he's never really gotten close to being that Gold Glove player again. So I don't think you're bringing him in to be a Gold Glover. Then when we look at outs above average, he had 0 in 2018, 2 in 2019, 5 in 2020, 3 in 21, 5 in 22, was a -5 in 23, was a 2 in 24, and was a -2 last year in 25. So,
and these are all things that you're projecting to decline over the course of a 10 plus year contract that he's expected to be getting.
Right. So again, that's not really why you're signing him. You're signing him for the great awareness of the strike zone, somebody who walks at a super high rate. I mean, just last year, 96th percentile walk rate, 85th percentile strikeout rate, 98th percentile chase rate. When I tell you this guy does not swing at a pitch outside of the zone, I mean, 98th percentile, 17.6% of the time is like 4th best in baseball when I looked it up last year. Like that's the elite level. Like, we think Juan Soto doesn't chase much out of the zone, although he has his tendencies. Like, Kyle Tucker does not swing out of the strike zone.
Yeah, and you pointed it out, and it was something I also noticed. Like, that's a number that has gotten better over the years for Kyle Tucker. Like, he is consistently getting better at understanding what the strike zone is, and his chase numbers, as a result, have declined year over year to the point that he's now up to, like you said, 98th percentile in all of baseball.
Yeah, and so now really, I think this conversation, those are the numbers, and I can continue to gush over all the red on Kyle Tucker's Statcast page and all the different things that he's great at. You have to ask yourself 2 questions. The first question is, do we think this player is worth the type of commitment that it looks like it's going to be, which is going to be 11, 12 years, $300, $400, $500 million? That's question number 1. And then question number 2 is, do the New York Mets feel comfortable adding basically a 3rd player at that type of range? And
right.
I think that's where it gets a little more murky. But from the first perspective, I wouldn't have any, like, the skills that Kyle Tucker has, I don't think are the types of skills that deteriorate massively over the course of a 12-year contract.
Yeah.
Because, listen, it's baseball. The 12-year deal, you're basically really paying for 10, but you're spreading it out over 12, and you're accepting that those final 2 years, when he's 39 and 40, are going to be rough, and you're just hoping that at some point during that time you win a championship or 2. And so over 10 years, from ages 29 to 39, or if he signs the contract, 28 to 38, however you want to look at it, will Kyle Tucker still have an elite command of the strike zone? Will he still have the ability to steal, maybe not 25 bases, but still be a threat on the base paths? Will he be somebody that can hit for decent power? Is he somebody that's going to be able to draw walks and not strike out? I mean, those are the types of skills that don't really deteriorate. Guys who hit the ball really hard but don't do a whole lot else, those are the guys that all of a sudden the bat speed slows down and they don't have anything. Like this, that's not who Kyle Tucker is. Kyle Tucker is not a Statcast merchant where he does one thing really, really well. He does a lot of things, really solidly. So that's where, if his defense deteriorates, okay, you got a DH spot. If if the home runs go from 25 to he's hitting 12 to 15, okay, you can deal with that because you know what you're getting, elsewhere. So for me, I wouldn't have any worry about giving the commitment. The question that I have is this something the Mets would be interested in?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking at, his underlying numbers here. Like, his chase rate alone, we've talked about, like, that is something that projects very well into the future. That's something we talked about with Soto. Maybe the power's not always there, but the understanding of the strike zone, the ability to draw walks, and obviously Tucker had much more of a threat on the base paths coming in. We didn't expect Soto to be the threat he was coming into 2025. And then, like, his zone contact percentage. He's a career around 86% of swings that he has in the zone he makes contact with, and that's something that also projects really well down the road. It's not about the power. That's obviously going to drop off for every player as they age, but the ability to create hits, to get on base, like, that is something that projects well. I think my biggest question mark as far as if the Mets are interested in giving this kind of commitment to another player, how much do they think Kyle Tucker is going to overlap with Soto in terms of what they give 5 years from now, where they're both declining as fielders, they're both playing the same position in the outfield, they're both guys that are left-handed hitters, they're projecting as DHs down the road. How much do you want to tie up in two left-handed hitting DHs in 2030 and beyond, when Soto's the obviously much better player that we're projecting down the road when we get to that point?
Yeah, I think for me, what allows me to open the door for the Mets to do this is we know that they're interested in Cody Bellinger, right? And Cody Bellinger is going to require a lengthy commitment. I mean, I'll just use The Athletic as the resource for this thought exercise. Their projection for Cody Bellinger is a 7-year, $182 million deal. That's a $26 million AAV over 7 years. They have Kyle Tucker at 12 years, 460, which would be 38 and some change. If you're interested in Cody Bellinger at 26 over the length of that deal, aren't you not interested at Kyle Tucker for an extra $12 million a season? Like, I think Kyle Tucker is $12 million a year better than Cody Bellinger and is worth the additional investment of the extra 5 years. Like, that's to me the way you can get to a place to be okay with this. If the Mets are truly interested in Cody Bellinger, then they're also interested in Kyle Tucker because he's the better, younger player, and it's not that much more than what Cody. Now, maybe the Mets are interested in Cody Bellinger if it's a 3-year deal and they're not interested in going to 7. Okay, then you're not getting Kyle Tucker because Kyle Tucker's not taking a 5-year deal from you. So if the Mets are interested in going to the lengths that we think the market's going to go for Cody Bellinger, then I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be interested in Kyle Tucker. Because I think he's a better player.
I agree. I just think the counterpoint that I could make to that is, well, Cody Bellinger fills a couple of spots because of the defensive versatility. You can have him at first base, which is a spot the Mets need, or you could have him in center field, which is currently a spot that the Mets could use at least to begin the season, depending on what their plans for Carson Bench are.
And it would be very David Stearns to be like, yeah, everyone's going to spend $460 on Kyle Tucker. I'm going to spend it on Cody Bellinger and get 2 positions.
Yeah.
Right? Like
on a shorter-term contract, higher AV, because that's the sort of contract that Bellinger would project better, like you said, over Tucker is going to want much longer of a deal.
Right. The more David Stearns move is Bellinger over Tucker. But if the Mets are interested in Bellinger, I don't think it's that far of a reach to say they should be interested in Tucker.
No, yeah, 100%.
And then that's where you loop in, okay, who's the general manager? What has his appetite in the past been for this? And then you get to a place of, we know flexibility is so important, and does Kyle Tucker create a logjam 4 years from now that all of a sudden we're redoing the Brandon Nimmo conversation in 2029, right?
Right.
And you want to avoid that. And so that's where it can get, and that's why I said it's not a one-to-one fit. I just think Kyle Tucker is such a special talent across the board that it would be hard for a team that struggled so much offensively last year to not get somebody as well-rounded as Kyle Tucker, right? Like, it just feels like he's the perfect fit for the middle of this lineup. And yeah, I know that you got to figure it out defensively. You have to figure out how you're, deploying your best 9 every day. But it just feels like for exactly what the Mets lacked last year, Kyle Tucker is the perfect fit.
Yeah. I just, the thing that continues to trip me up about Kyle Tucker is just the length of the contract. Like, I know he's under 30 years old, and that's kind of like Stearns. Once you hit 30, there's no chance you're getting 10 plus years. But I just think about, he makes the team significantly better, I think, for the next 4 to 5 years. After that, there are a lot more question marks that arise, especially because of how much his fit overlaps with what you project Soto to be doing 4 to 5 years from now. So I think if I had to pick what is David Stearns thinking right now, Cody Bellinger or Kyle Tucker, I think he's way more in on Bellinger.
1,000%. It's the more David Stearns move to offer Cody Bellinger like a 3 or 4 year deal with a super high AAV, because we just saw the Devin Williams contract of what it came in at. They're only paying like $10 million a year basically, and they're putting the rest of it into deferrals, so that'll lower the AAV on the luxury tax. Yeah, I mean, the more David Stearns move is Cody Bellinger. I'm just saying what I would rather them do is Kyle Tucker, just because I think
he's the better player. And like I said, like he will make the team significantly better for the next handful of years. I just, projecting it longer is where I think I get tripped up, because I know David Stearns will get tripped up.
Right. I was trying to let my brain wander from being always thinking at it through the David Stearns lens, because I'm normally that guy. Like, I'm normally like, no, they're not going to do that because it's David Stearns, right? I let myself wander, and I'm kind of mad at myself for doing it, because I'm like, boy, he would look really good in the blue and orange. Like, it would look really nice. that's going to do it for us. We have another episode early next week. Next Tuesday, I think, is when you'll get the next drop here. And I'm excited for this one. Jack doesn't know the player, but I've decided.
Okay.
Tatsuya Imai is next up for us. We're going to flip to the pitching side, and we're going to talk about a player that I think is atop Jack and I's wish list. Our dream offseason had him in there, and I cannot wait. I already plan over the weekend to just really sit down, and I'm going to consume as much Tatsuya Imai content as I can to be ready for the preview that we'll do next week. I
am so in on Tatsuya Imai. Like, I am. You said it. He's at the top of my wish list right now for like filling a hole that the Mets need, starting pitching, and like the kind of player that I think he will project to be in MLB. I am so excited about and with how he said he wants to beat the Dodgers. Like,
yeah, I'm in.
Fire me up.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. So we'll do that next Tuesday. The winter meetings start on Monday, I believe. Sunday or Monday?
Sunday, I think,
is when the winter meetings start. So obviously, if the Mets do anything major, we will pause what we're doing with this preview series and dive into that. But we will continue to chug along with these names off of our free agent preview list until the Mets sign one of them. In the meantime, do us a favor. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you may be listening to us. Share the show with a fellow Mets fan. We would greatly appreciate that. You want to watch the program over on YouTube. Jack McKessy, McKessy, is the YouTube channel where you can watch the program over there. That'll do it for us. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy all the football over the weekend. There's a big Formula One race that I'll be up early for on Sunday. And perhaps maybe David Stearns will have an early Christmas gift for us all by the time we talk again. Who knows? But until then, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.